That's true love, Norma. Yeah.
Grew up in Manchester, and the war broke out, of course, in 1939. And my sister was in the Air Force at that time. She was in Coventry, and she managed to get a leave to come home, but her husband couldn't come at the same time, so she went down to where he was. They were in a place down on the east coast of England, down by Dover. You've heard of Dover, the White Cliffs of Dover. Anyway, when she was ready to come home, this soldier was there getting ready to go on leave, and she heard him mention he was going to the YMCA. And she said to him, well, if you'd like to come with me, I'm sure you'd be welcome to spend your leave at home, which he decided he would. I don't know how he did because he was so shy. Anyway, I was working in that store just around the corner from where we lived, and I could see down the street quite a distance out of the big window. And I saw my sister coming with this soldier alongside her. They both had their kit bags on the shoulder, and they come home, of course. And I made an excuse to my boss to go home to meet him. I was so curious. Anyway, I got in the house and we looked at each other, and the first thing when I looked into his eyes, I said, that's the man I'm going to marry to myself. And that's the way it worked out. He was called Murdoch, but they called him Dick for short. And actually I called him Wilfred for a long time because the boys in the army had christened him Wilfred or Wilf, because there was a Joyce Carter that could yodel, and my husband could yodel, so they gave him the nickname Wilf. Yeah, it was comical. I started writing a book in 2003, but I didn't get anywhere near the end of it yet. And I put Wilf for quite a while in my book, and writing to my aunt years ago, after we got married, and I'd mentioned Wilf, of course, when I'd write to her. After a while I called him Dick. So the first letter I put, and I forgot to call him Wilf when I was writing to her, and I put Dick. She wondered who Dick was. She thought I'd left my husband, I guess, and go with another person. It was comical, yeah. We spent as much time as we could while he was on leave, and I never felt so lonesome in my life as I did when he left to go back again. But he said he couldn't wait to come back on leave, so he kept coming on leave. And first thing he wanted to marry me. I was only 16. And my mother said, well, why don't you wait till the war's over, which we did. And thank God he was able to come home in the one piece. And we got married in November the 10th, 1945. The war had just ended. And then, of course, was waiting to come over. My sister got married in 1943, and she had a little girl to bring over with her. And she came just a month before I did, in June, and then I came in July of 1946. It was 8 months after, I think it was about 8 months after we got married, my husband and I. He tried to get a 48-hour leave before leaving England, but they wouldn't allow him to have one, so we had to wait to see each other till I come over. When I came over, it was like the pioneer days. We didn't even have electricity. There was no water in the house. You had to go out to the well. Him and my husband and his brother had made a well 13 feet deep, just away from the house a little bit. You'd have to go out with the bucket and bail the water out, bring it in the house. That came over on the Queen Mary, 85,000 tons that was. And I walked into the cabins there. Well, you couldn't see from one end to the other of them. It was such a huge boat. Even on the pier, if you'd look at the stern and the bow, you couldn't see them. It was so huge, and it was beautiful. I looked at the, there was four bunks in the cabin that I was in, so three other girls came in with me, and I looked at the life belts there, and it didn't jar me one bit. I was always afraid of thinking of the trip coming over and across on the water. I didn't like the idea of that at all, but when I looked at the life belts, it didn't bother me. Well, I had very mixed emotions. I was sad at leaving home, and yet anxious to get home to my husband here. And I had written a letter to his mother when we met and told her that he had a home to come to while he was in the army, and he could come on leave whenever. So that made her happy. We kept conversing through our letters, and I felt I knew them when I got here. And they were the most wonderful people to me. They treated me like I was even better than one of their own, I think. Yeah, and all the neighbours were the same. They were all so good to me. It was just like coming from one home to another, Norma. Yeah, it was beautiful. During the war, he was on those big anti-tank guns. They helped to put the bridge across the Rhine in one place. And my uncle, one time he wrote to me and he said they had lost their gun. They had lost 4 men were killed, 4 were injured, I guess. They were waiting for another gun to be replaced. Yeah. That's the most I heard about what they went through. One of my husband's friends told me that when they moved ahead into the trenches there, they moved ahead, and the ones that went in the trench they were in were all blown to bits. But they did bomb the stations one night, and some of the big buildings in England, some of them were buried alive, people that were there. I remember going the next morning, I had to go through the city for some reason, and it was still smouldering, the buildings. And that night we stood in our backyard. We were 3 miles away from the city, but you could see the red hue in the sky from the fires. Yeah, it was pretty frightening. And of course we lived about a mile or a little more from the anti-tank guns that the Women's Army was manning the guns at that time there. And one of them used to come to the store where I was working, and the next morning we had quite a noise with the guns going. The next morning one of the girls were there, and she said she was really proud because the girls had brought down an enemy plane that night. We used to find shrapnel around in the streets. The kids would be picking it up the next morning. Yeah. They built shelters in people's backyards, made of brick, and there was, like, the door was opened, there was no door on it. They had a window in it, but that was blocked with big, blocks like brick. But you could push them out from the inside, but you couldn't push them in. That was more or less to save you from the shrapnel that would be falling, or, anything like that. It wouldn't save you from a bomb for sure, but I remember the first night that the sirens went. They went 13 times. We got up, dressed, into the shelter, back again. By the time the last all clear had gone, it was time to go to work. And that's what they used to do night after night. They'd come over and you could hear the planes. They made a different sound than the English planes. They used to have like a thumping sound to them. We could always tell when the Jerrys were coming over. Yeah, it was pretty scary. One night we thought they were dropping gas. We all had gas masks, which we had to carry with us everywhere. If you went to a cinema or anywhere, you had to have that with you, or you wouldn't be allowed to go in. The worst frightening night I remember was when they dropped a whistling bomb. And we were all in the shelter holding our breath. and wondering where it was going to go and hoping it wouldn't hit us. And we didn't want anyone else to be killed either. I never found out where it did fall. Yeah. There was one cinema that they had dropped a bomb just outside of it, and thank God everybody had gone home at the time. But there was a huge crater there in front of the building the next morning. Yeah. And everything you go in, like going into Foodland or any food store now, everything was rationed, but the bread, salt and pepper and vinegar, but everything else was rationed. You had to have coupons for it, even soap, and the detergent you wash your clothes and everything was rationed. Yeah. And then in the line of fruit, like oranges were scarce because of bringing them over during the war. Bananas were very scarce. Things like that we, in the store, used to give them to the youngest first, and like the expectant mothers would get them. And then if there was anything left, we'd share them with the rest of the customers. The best part of it, I guess, yeah, was meeting my husband. Yeah. Oh yes, and he was a wonderful man. We had 55 years together. We had our ups and downs, but yeah. We had 3 boys, yeah. Of course, they're all married now and have their own families. Yeah. There must have been thousands on the boat. Yeah, thousands of them. And they had little place where you could go and get your hair done. They had a little store, and it was the first time you could buy all the candies you wanted, because they were rationed too. It was a great thing, you know, to be able to do that. They had a beautiful big hall where you'd almost sink in the carpet. It was so thick and nice. And they had beautiful chairs there. They had a stage, and all around this big hall there was huge mirrors. It was just beautiful. Yeah. You'd sit in one of the chairs and you didn't feel like getting up out of them. They were so comfortable. Yeah. And then the meal times, we'd all have certain times given to us to go to the place to eat. And the steward would be there. As soon as you'd finish one course, they'd be there with the other one for you. And food plentiful after being rationed. It was quite a change. Oh, we were both very happy to be together again. Yeah. It seemed forever we were waiting. 8 months seemed a long time at that time. We weren't together when he proposed. He just wrote in a letter. He just wrote in a letter if I'd marry him. Yeah. And of course, I intended to marry him when I first met him, so that was easy to answer. Yeah. Oh yes. You know you're in love when you can't live without a person. You know you're in love. We had a wonderful life together. Like I say, lots of ups and downs, sickness and different things, but we always managed to get through. Yes. I was one of the very fortunate ones, I guess. Yeah, to come to where I did, and to the people I came to. Yes. I couldn't have had a better life than I had. Yeah.